Welcome to Module 6 briefing. Module 6 we cover Chapter 7, and this is really where the rubber meets the road in ERP implementation. This is operational and post-implementation issues. No matter what you've done up to now in deciding what ERP system needs you may have, who can satisfy those needs in terms of vendors, evaluating vendors, selecting the right architecture, selecting the right package, you still have to implement it and make it work. And that's not easy, because as soon as you cut over to a new system, you got a lot of troubles on your hands. And this is what we're going to review today. How do you address that transition? You have to, first of all, before you go live, make sure you're ready to go live. Make sure you've addressed all issues that are outstanding, anything that could jeopardize the go live date. Get as many people involved as possible. And I can't say this enough, but an ERP system is a type of system where few people really want to dedicate the time and energy to understand how the new system is going to work until they really have no choice. So you have to try and force the issue early. And you have to be ready to stabilize all the issues that are going to arise after you implement the system. Make sure everyone understands how to use it and they're comfortable with it, and really stay on top of it. You also have to do a lot of training. It is really a difficult time for the company. Here's where you are in the overall project methodology. You've analyzed your requirements, you've designed the system, both in terms of what applications you need, what architecture you prefer. You're building it and testing it, and in most cases you're acquiring it from outside. Now you have to implement it and stabilize it. And this cuts across all functions, technologies, and there's also a large change management component here. Okay, so you need a checklist. This is kind of like an airline pilot taking off or landing. There's a checklist you go through to make sure you don't miss anything. And notice how many components of your organization are involved: infrastructure, development, configuration. Configuration relates to the assumptions made between the applications and the surrounding hardware and architecture. You can't be mixing apples and oranges at the last minute. Do readiness reviews. Have a detailed report available so senior management knows where you're at. You may even want to do a project review for readiness with executives of the company available as well, because I can tell you from experience, as soon as the ERP system is implemented, you're going to have a slowdown. Nothing happens as easy as it did before because there's a learning curve for using it. Also, you likely have a project office or PMO that is going to be managing the overall implementation, and there may be a lot of red items or things that are behind schedule. Now, training is essential. You're going to have to force the issue because no one has enough time for training until they actually have to do it, and now they're getting stuck because they don't know how to use the new system. So you have to have incentives for training, get people involved in training, and make it mandatory. All right, and have people who actually use the system, have the vendors involved in your training, and get senior management involved so that people in all facets of the company recognize the importance. Once you've done training, system is implemented, you've done cutover, that's when problems arise, and you have to stabilize that system quickly. Catch problems as soon as they appear and jump on them so they don't run away with you. That's the first 60 to 90 days. You need to have your best people on it to react to issues. The thing is, when you pilot a system, you can never utilize the system in the same scale that you will when you fully implement the system. So no matter what testing or piloting you do, you're never going to catch everything. So you're going to have, when people really start exercising the system, you're going to find all the bottlenecks, all the bugs that you missed, and you need your experts handy. And if you've customized the system and maybe there's not enough documentation on hand, then it's going to make stabilization more difficult. You may also have a system that's working right, but you have end users making mistakes in using the system. So there's a lot of trouble during this time, so have your A-team ready to help stabilize. You may need to do some post-production support, managing system operations on a day-to-day basis, managing risk, working out issues, making sure, for example, orders that are coming in, they're logged appropriately, they're hitting the books, all the information is flowing through the modules that they're supposed to flow through to, audit the system. Here's an example graphically of what happens during implementation. So notice how the resource requirements jump from low to very high during the implementation. And then you're going to discover issues. You're going to have to deal with those issues. There'll be a backlog of issues. And notice the ongoing peaks as upgrades occur, new modules are implemented, bugs are fixed. So it's almost like a ringing noise as you get bumps of peak activity as you're making adjustments to new issues that you discover. All right, so you need a lot of post-implementation support, which is ongoing training, go-live support, data validation, data correction, just to make sure the internal nuts and bolts of the system are working properly, putting in patches, fixes, adding new features. As end users are forced to use it, they're going to realize that there's something that they should have asked had they have thought of asking it. Now you also need to do knowledge transfer. You may have people who've been around for a long time who have an understanding, an intuitive understanding of the business processes in their heads, and you need to figure out how to extract that information, document it, and share it. I hate the term knowledge management because it's a very high level and somewhat abstract term, but it really reflects the key difference between tacit and explicit knowledge. Tacit knowledge is the knowledge in everyone's head, and if a key employee leaves the organization, tacit knowledge leaves with the employee. Explicit knowledge is documented knowledge. So your challenge as an organization is to tap the knowledge that you have in people's heads, document it, and share it so the entire organization becomes knowledgeable, not just specific individuals. And this is really essential during an ERP implementation and cutover. And see the very first line in this presentation document. A knowledge management plan will ensure that knowledge is retained, and that leads to facilitating faster learning, which is one reason why you need a centralized data repository, perhaps an intranet, some resource that everyone can go to tap into that knowledge. So what does it mean for you as a manager? That's the closer you get to going live, the more you have to focus on the day-to-day issues, tasks, activities, issues, problems, bugs, missing functionality. To the degree that you do this, your life will be made a lot easier. To the degree that you don't, you could have a botched implementation that could get very expensive, and you could have the organization putting up a lot of resistance to that new ERP system. And it may never deliver the results for which you spent all that money on. So it's an important time, and that's our focus for Module 6. So I'll see you in the discussions this week, and this has been a brief overview of the key points in Chapter 7 of the text.